Good morning, and welcome to an absolutely exquisite dawn here in the African bush. My name is Brent Leo Smith, and we have dangerous Dave, the dimpled dish, back from leave, and he's looking very fresh and keen to get our chat. Now remember, this is 100% live, and you're more than welcome to ask us questions by using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter, or just pop it on whichever feed you might be watching on. I'm just listening because there was some lions roaring down to the south of us. I think they might have been south of our boundary, but it did sound like they were on the move. Ralph also heard lions roaring to the north of us. So we're just having a quick look while it's this time of the morning. Hopefully we hear something, or smell something, or even see something. It's been quite quiet on the cat front for the last couple of days, so I'm hoping that everyone's back to work on Monday. So let's keep moving. Now, while I keep moving and try to keep warm, let's send you back to Rolf, who's also back from leave.
So, good morning everybody, and welcome aboard on our part of the drive this morning. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and my wingman this morning is Senzo Mkhize. How's it, Senzo? Now everybody, it's been a while since I've been out on drive, and this morning I'm just heading out. I'm trying to see what's happening, what's going on around. I've been chatting to all the other guides, seeing what's been happening last night around the campfire. But this morning, having headed out, I did hear a little bit of the lions that Brent was talking about, but you know, my favorite, those hyenas, I've heard a little bit of them calling as well, and so I've just headed out trying to catch up with them, see if we can find one of them, but for the minute, lots of birds calling. That sun's just about to come up over the horizon, so it's a lovely start to the morning. About 17 degrees centigrade, 63 degrees Fahrenheit in that area, and here we've got a couple of little crested francolin. Now he's jumped up in the tree, and that's why I stopped here, because I thought maybe there is a predator that has pushed him up there. That is a little bit of an alarm call, but we're just waiting to see. Maybe he's just displaying a little bit up there, but it's always worth a listen. And you know, it's so nice to be back here in the Sabi Sands, where we do sort of hone in a little bit more on all the alarm calls of the animals, and using that more of as a tool than we would in the Masai Mara, where we use mostly visuals and long distance type honing in on where the predators might be. Because of the different landscape and vegetation, here it's a lot thicker, more dense, and we use the monkeys, the birds, and all sorts of other things to, the squirrels, obviously, a big one, and all the little animals that are very aware of their surroundings. So, wondering what these two are alarming on. I see there's a couple of them in the little trees here. So there's, you know, they can also sometimes be alarming for us, but they seem quite concerned about what is around here. But nonetheless, they might just be displaying. They've been probably just waking up shortly, or a little while ago, not shortly. Right, very nice to see a few of them here. All in a little group, but not very relaxed. So that's why I'm just trying to work out what is bothering them. It's lovely to see that. Is it a hyena? Is it a leopard? I don't think it's a lion, but you never know. We did have some elephant tracks a little bit further back. That's why I was following those as well, trying to see if we could see. It was a small little herd, but and we've headed out now right up towards the Vuyatela access road, and well, because I haven't been on Djuma for quite some time, I'm not exactly orientated as well as I was before I left. So I'm just hitting the boundaries, working all the roads once more, and getting lost. I've got my little map, so it's always fine. Thanks for welcoming me back, Dizzy Lizzie. Yes, it's been a while. I had a wonderful holiday with my family down on the east coast of South Africa in Port Alfred. That's where I stay. So it's going to take me just a day or two just to get my bearings and, you know, to get all my senses tuned in back into the bush, because I've been down on the coast, and, you know, everything there centered around the ocean. So, speaking of oceans and speaking of different people, let's head you on over to Steve, who I think's in the tent. Let's see what he's up to this morning.
Yes, I am indeed. Welcome back, Mr. Ralph. I hope you are settled in and ready for your adventures back in Djuma. I'm sure it is much greener and longer grass than it was last time. My name is Steve Falconbridge. I'm joined by the impeccable Fergus. He is not holding the camera right now. He is busy holding a remote control because we've got something in the sky. Yes, we are in the tent. We have access to the drone. We have access to the microscope. We have some lovely grasses, some trees, a gall wasp or two to look at this morning. So please feel free to send through your comments and questions to hashtag Safari Live. And on that note, we're going to go into the sky. It's a beautiful morning. It's 19 degrees Celsius, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. It is definitely winter knocking on the door, as most mornings we are waking up now with extra layers on. The fact that Ferg and I didn't have to go out in the vehicle this morning means that we don't need to be as rugged up as we were, but still you can feel the season changing, the moisture, the dew on the ground. We get very wet feet when we walk there now. That sort of change in evening and morning temperatures leaves the moisture and the dew on the ground. And there we can see the open clearing of quarantine with the large marula trees. The smaller silver-like ones are the silver cluster leaves. And you can see evidence of the termite mounds, the large open sort of clear color patches. Danielle, that's a marvelous question. Marula trees have got an enormous root system. They are normally found right up on top of the katina, on top of the slope, and they are the first trees in the summertime or in the sort of wet season to gain leaves, and generally the last ones on the slope to lose the leaves, which means they've got an amazing root system which not only brings water up but also has the ability to store water in them. The marula quite resembles a succulent. When you look at the tree itself in the winter months, once it's lost its leaves, the ends of the stems are actually very long and stubby. They quite resemble that of a baobab. And if you were dying of thirst and you needed access to water, you could go to marula tree, you could dig up the root and you could sort of scrape it down and you could actually squeeze moisture out of the root and you'd be able to survive. Obviously, sustainably, that's not a good idea because we would destroy these trees. But if you were dying and you needed some nourishment in the form of moisture, it would be a very good way to go. Okay, I'll try and get a picture on screen. I don't know if we'll find one of a marula, but who knows what we might find. Okay, so not mural, happens when you've got fat fingers. Let's see what this reveals. Isn't that a beautiful morning out there though, folks? I wonder how many of you have managed to fly in a helicopter over the savannah. If you've ever the balloon rides that we do up in the Masai Mara, there really is quite an amazing sort of place to be in the early morning. Very still and quiet on the ground, and who knows what is going on the ground. Let's see what predators have been moving around, what action has been taking place. On that note, let's go back down onto the ground with Brent Lear-Smith and see what his plans are for the morning.
Oh yes, hello to a chilly ground. Winter is definitely on its way. We're still checking the southern areas quickly, and so far no sign. As I said, I thought that those lion calls might have been coming from just south of our boundary, I wonder who it could be. Maybe I should get on the radio when I get a bit closer to find out. I also thought maybe just a quick squiz through here for Hukumuri. Other than that, we're going to get onto the southern boundary and head to the east, and then check Cheetah Cut Line, that area as well. Oh, I've got a friend under the car, Branch. Hold on. There we go. It is gone. No more to irritate me. Things like that tend to drive me absolutely bonkers. Like a rattle on a car. Why, thank you, Dale. Dale likes my sugar. Yes, it's a nice one. It's nice and warm as well. So it's not a full-sized sugar. It's a half-size sugar. That's why I use it as a scarf. The full-size sugar is over my legs because it's that cold today. Oh, I just don't like being cold. Okay, let's have a good look. This is one of Hukumuri's favorite spots to enter Djuma on. Let me just see if there are any footy prints here. There are no footy prints. Okay, well, we've just come down onto the ground from up in the air. Let's send you back sky high.
Well, thank you very much as we watch another morning dawn arrive on the African continent. There we have got some beautiful colors as the sun crests the horizon. There's some cloud in the distance, which makes for an absolutely beautiful shot in the morning. And yes, we are up in the Maurice with Ferg. Obviously, Ferg is on the ground. How high are we, Ferg?
We're sitting at 56 meters.
56 meters. So Maurice is just sitting up there, enjoying the morning sun. I can hear a crested francolin starting its morning chorus. Rabbi, I've heard it happen before. I've heard of raptors attacking drones. Ferg, what's your experience with the drones?
Anyone shown some interest, but no one was ever attacked.
Ferg says he's had some interest from birds having a look at the drone, but I think Seb was telling me that, I'm not sure if Seb told me a true story, but apparently a raptor attacked the drone one day and I think knocked the drone out the sky, because if you're a territorial bird and this raptor looking... okay, so it was with Connor. A batelier actually knocked the drone out of the sky. Let's hope the individual bird didn't sustain any injuries, but the drone certainly did as it plummeted to the ground. Now, just in the bottom left of the screen, you'll see that's one of our masts. That's how we are able to collect all the signal and data and send it across the world to you in your bedroom or lounge or kitchen, wherever you might be, in your office, at work. I know lots of people like to watch a little bit of the sunrise while they're working diligently in the office. And there's just the moisture in the front there is Vuurtele Dam. Absolutely beautiful shot. Beautiful morning. I can already feel it warming up. We always find that this 20 minutes as the sun crests is the coldest, because what's happening is it's actually forcing the sun as it comes over the horizon. It's got sort of an angle of light, and that's heating the ground or the air above us, and it's pushing the cold air down. So you suddenly get this 20 minutes to half an hour of cold pockets of air as the sun eventually crests the horizon and then starts to warm that air as well. But I wonder if any of you have noticed that before, how suddenly as the sun starts coming up, it feels like it drops a few degrees. It's all to do with gravity and the weight of heat, the weight of cold air. You get a sort of little wedge of it down here in the basin. Beautiful. Very still. Doesn't seem to be too much movement on the ground, but we know that the best way to see the animals on the ground is by a vehicle or on foot. But just marvelous to get these scenic shots from so high up in the sky. Never too late. You are never too late. You are just in time this morning, and indeed this is stunning. We're sitting here in the tent. I'm watching this on the big screen. It feels like I am back in the Mara with the balloon safaris. Hey, Ferg? Ferg was down here enjoying the drone, or what? You were cameraing. You were doing the camera work while Seb was doing the drone. I can't remember. A little bit more control on the drone than on the balloon. The balloon would move like it is moving now, maybe a bit quicker, but there was absolutely no way of slowing it down or stopping it. Very difficult to control the direction. And Jeff, no, we don't use the drone to help search for animals. It would be, you think it would be ideal. I don't know, it's just, Ferg, why don't we use it to search for animals?
Not actually that easy to spot them.
Ferg says it's not that easy to spot them from the air. I think also this drone in particular, the battery life doesn't last long enough to be able to fly around and cover large areas. I was thinking about it the other day. You know, if on bushwalk we just had a small little drone that was easy to carry and we just wanted to check in a block, you know, how sometimes we have tracks that cross a road and head into a block, and we could just quickly drone over that sort of line and see if we found them, and then if we did, we could walk in. So I think it would be a good idea, but you do need permits. You do need the rights to use drones. It is outlawed in the Kruger National Park to use drones recreationally, purely because of the possibility of what people can do with them, privacy issues, conservation issues. So it's quite important to have control over that. So we have all sorts of permits and documentation for that sort of thing. But I think a small little drone, pop it out, getting quite sort of technology in the future, isn't it? We just pop out a drone and send it out, and we find everything we're looking for. What was that? That was one of the Star Wars movies when he sent out all those little ball-like flying machines, and they came back and told them once they'd found what they're looking for. I think that technology is on the way, and seeing as we are not seeing anything from the ground, let's go to Ralph Kirsten and see if he's found anything.
I haven't found anything just yet, and that little search, well, the stop with the crested francolin produced naught, but nonetheless, we've started doing just a little bit of a grid search. So your typical search pattern, just doing a zigzag or taking each little road and just continuing on from there. So we're now on Aubrey's Road, coming off of Vuyatela Access. And as I say, I'm just relearning all of these roads once more. And I must just remind everybody, you know, I'm a little bit out of practice, so please don't forget to join us on the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and on the YouTube live tube. Send us your questions and your comments, and get involved in the largest game drive in the world. Now, that sun, as Steve, I believe, was just showing you, has now risen up quite nicely. We're starting to get that lovely early morning glow, and it's lovely and fresh. There's a real crispness to the air this morning. It smells so fresh, and I'm quite excited. I think we might just find a leopard or a lion, or even better, a clan of hyena just around the corner here. Now, I know there's no corners in the bush, but that's just a term we use for if we come around a little corner, loop around a tree, and we spot some animals there. Well, it's always surprising, it's always exciting. On the road, we've got a couple of old tracks of elephants. I've seen some few fresh tracks of elephants, but I'm just continuing driving a little bit because I do want to cover a little bit of ground this morning, especially nice and fresh. Maybe those predators are quite active, so excuse me for not stopping and discussing any of the smaller things just for now. I want to use this early morning period just to keep moving until we find something nice and exciting. Once it heats up a little bit more, obviously then I'll be stopping quite a bit more so that we can look at the smaller stuff. But this is always that golden hour just after and just before the sun has risen, best time of the day to find predators. Not to say that they won't be walking around after that, especially the leopards, but this is still the best time to find them. So we continue on as Senzo shows you how that sun's getting up through the thicket. Now, Madison, I'm also hoping that I find those hyenas this morning. As I've said, we've heard them, but when I heard some that were very close, it was firstly this morning at about 4 o'clock in the morning as I was having my morning coffee. It was very close to the camp, and then again just near to where I saw where we were watching those crested francolin. But I think they were just out of the boundary. Now, that's what's so intriguing about hyena. We seem to hear them everywhere, but we don't often see them that much. Especially here in the thick sort of bush of Djuma in the Sabi sands. It's not as easy as, for instance, in the Masai Mara, where you've got these big open plains and you can see them from quite a distance. So, right, we're back on the Vuyatela axis, and we're going to be, as I said, keep on this zigzag search pattern, and we will then see what we can find. Now, we've got a game drive vehicle up front. Now, Ali, you want to know what I miss the most about Djuma? Well, I definitely missed this kind of feeling, this thicket type bush, and also listening out to all the different signs of the animals. And most importantly, Ali, I think that I missed being out on foot. Now, I'm not out on foot this morning, but I can't wait to get out on foot and follow up on especially hyena tracks. I want to try and see if we can spot in on any of the little den sites. Now, we're just passing one of the game viewers. Morning. Fine on you. He was very friendly and moved out the way for us. He didn't have guests, so if he did, I would have been the one getting out of the way. See, we've got hyena tracks going up and down on the road on this side. Well, maybe we should just have a quick look at some of them here while we're driving. Senzo? Okay, I'm going to jump off and we can just have a look. You know, not everybody is quite familiar with tracks. I don't know, Senzo, if you're going to be able to possibly get into these tracks over here. No? A little bit further forward? Over here? No? See, it's always difficult just with that camera angle. There? Can you see that nicely? Okay, so obviously everybody, once again, this animal is moving straight up the road like that, and very easy with the hyena track. Looking at it even just briefly, that pad at the back, it has a very clear angle like that. Even though the flat, if it had to be square, it would be like that. And this animal is moving in that direction. Now, obviously, with that broad side being on this side, this would be the right foot, and then we would have a left foot possibly over there. Now, also, the back foot of a hyena, quite a lot smaller than that of the front foot, and you can see that with just their general body shape. Much bigger, broader shoulders in the front, slanty back, and almost these small little legs at the back. Brown hyena have much smaller, almost half the size, the back legs and back feet to the front feet. So we can very often see the difference between spotted hyena and brown hyena just by the difference between the front feet and the back feet. Now, another couple of things, Senzo, I don't know if you can go in there, but we'll do a lot more of this when we are out on foot. We've got these kidney-shaped outer toes, and obviously we do see quite a lot of the little claws. Now, sorry about that, but we've got a vehicle approaching us, so I'm just going to pop back into the vehicle and we'll move along. But that was still nice. We start off a little bit with the tracks. I love doing the tracks, and hyena being one of my favorite. So here we've got some guests coming towards us, and we'll just move out the way a little bit for them. Morning. So, speaking of tracks, let's head you on over to Brent and see what tracks he has been able to find for you.
Alas, we have, and I think it's of Birmingham boys, but looks like they've done a big loop in and out. They came in around Cheetah Plains, went straight through Torchwood, up into Buffelshoek, and then they've come straight out crossed the cheetah cut line into Chitwa, and then headed southeast from there. The guys are still on the tracks, and I'm almost certain those are the lions I heard roaring down to the south that we came to look for. So here we go. Big fat male lion footprints, but unfortunately disappearing out of our traverse area. And it sounds like they're going to disappear out of the northern Sabi Sands quite quickly, as they are probably heading back towards Mala Mala from what I've heard on the radio. So, let's go find some leopard tracks. And as I said, I heard them roaring this morning. I was quite sure that they sounded like nice big males, and I was hoping they might still be on a Djuma, but unfortunately, or Chitwa for that matter, but unfortunately not. I think their new prides, I think Kambula Pride, which is on Mala Mala, which used to be called the Mangen Breakaways, if I remember correctly, and they've also now taken dominion over the Tsalala Pride. So lots of new females to keep them busy. Now, we saw those big fat male lion tracks. So, Rabbi, the Birmingham boys are a coalition of 4 big male lions. So, they are lions. The cheetah coalition here doesn't really even have a name. It's a coalition of 2 males. Just called the Cheetah Brothers, as they're normally referred to. We don't see them too often in this area. They tend to be further to the east along the Kruger boundary. Now, I did have male leopard tracks towards the end of drive yesterday in this area, so that's why we're heading into here. I'm going to zigzag through between Cheetah Cut Line and Drakensberg, see if we get any luck. I think there could be Hasana from the tracks we saw. So he's liable to pop out anywhere, literally anywhere. Well, it seems like Steve is using all the toys this morning, so from being up in the air, we're going to take you down to a micro level.
Boys and their toys, Brent, I'm sure you can understand. We just had the audio of those male lions coming from directly south from where we are now. I reckon, does Brent reckon they're south of the boundary? They didn't sound too far away, but it is amazing how, in this coolness of the morning, how far those actual audios can go. But marvellous. It's been a while, Fergie, since we've heard lions, and this is Djuma after all. And if you know what Djuma means, it means the roar of the lion. CC, lions have a roar. When they territorial, call that loud. It's basically an advertisement of 1, 2, 3, 4 males, 5 males, 6 males. And it's the strength of them coming forward that shows other males somewhere else. Hang on, there's a chorus of males there. There's only 2 of us here. Let's rather go the other way. I've also seen female lions, when they hear males calling, if they don't know those males, they move the other way, especially if they've got cubs, and they'll keep moving. If they go this way and they get lions calling, that's how they'll move back this way. They won't call back, because that'll just attract the males. So it's a territorial defiance call. It's basically to space out the territory and to advertise to other males and females their presence and their sort of dominance in that area. If you get males coming in who are being defiant to want to take over, the first thing they do is call. And what that does is it attracts the dominant males in the area, and then you're going to get some conflict. So I don't think there's any other type of roar. You get other types of contact calls, just little when cubs or lions have lost their pride. It's just little slow. You can only get it from not far away, but the roar is always territorial. So we have walked out into the bushes around, and it is still there. We have found a marvelous grasshopper that, let's quickly go to the microscope before it jumps away. Look at this little individual. He is tiny. He's a little red, pinkish red color. Look at those eyes. He's got stunted antennae. And he's been doing a very nice sort of cleaning. He's moving his mouth parts over his feet. And you can see he's got the 6 legs. There's the mouth parts. He's eating something or cleaning something. But marvelous to get these views of these grasshoppers. And he tried to jump away once, but I managed to catch him again, and he's yet to disappear once more. I think he's still very cold. I don't know if you can tell, but he's very moist. The branch I got him off was very, very covered in dew. And insects, they are ectothermic, which means they rely on external temperatures. Let me just try and move him into frame. They rely on external temperatures to warm them up. So generally in the morning, insects can be a little bit sluggish. A friend of mine who actually did scorpions of South Africa, and it's not cruel, folks, to do this because they are ectothermic. If you cool them down, they slow down. So he took lots of photographs of scorpions, and the way to do that was just to put them in the fridge for a few hours. And then when they came out, they were much more docile and they didn't move as fast, but they very quickly warmed up and started squirming all over the place and running around. So in the early morning, it's a very good time to try and catch these insects and to do some nice up close and personal. Wisteria, it is a beautiful color, I agree. And have a look at that beautiful compound eye. Loads and loads and loads of eyes inside, having a look in all different directions. What they are processing is really beyond the human scope of understanding. He definitely seems to be eating something there. Those mouth parts, the mandibles. He's having it. I'm doing a voiceover now. I'm actually the grasshopper. This is very nice. Whatever this is I'm eating is very tasty. Nice to lick my fingers. I do love the colors. And looking close in on an eye like that. This is something that normally we don't get to spend too much time doing. So he's definitely cleaning his feet. Can you see that? He's gone onto the next inside foot. He's now probably going to move that one on the top right of the screen, or top middle of the screen. That might move in afterwards. Let's see if he moves it. So not only birds grooming in the morning, it's insects too. And as the name grasshopper implies, they are vegetarians, not necessarily feeding on grass. We found this one on a magic guarri, but he wasn't really feeding on the guarri that I could tell. Let me just try to focus that again. He's moved. And yeah, most insects have very similar eyes. They have the compound eyes, maybe some small, simple eyes. But I wouldn't know if it's exactly the same as a fly. But it is compound and classified quite similarly. The fly's got more of sort of a visor-like eye. The two major compound eyes kind of join in the middle, almost like snowboard goggles or ski goggles, if you've seen them before, to cover that entire front and around section of the eye. Whereas the grasshopper seems to only have it on the side of the head, as he's exiting stage top. Look at that. Look at those powerful legs though, folks. Hey? That entire beautiful patterns. Hey? I reckon some people wouldn't mind having some leather pants with that design on it. But have a look how thick that sort of upper thigh is of him. And grasshoppers are able to jump. And the crested franklin would like its piece in the background there. And grasshoppers are able to jump 27 times or more their length. They are housed in an exoskeleton. Arthropod means to be housed in an exoskeleton, basically an armored animal. And they jump like a knight in shining armor, 27 times their length, and then they just land on the ground. Can you imagine jumping? I mean, I'm about 1.7 meters. Can you imagine jumping 27 times that and then landing on the ground and then being ready to just jump again without injuring yourself? I think it would be quite painful. Jeff, grasshoppers and crickets. Crickets tend to make a noise. They have a crickety sort of sound. They're classified very differently. I'm by no means an expert of insects, but they look different. Grasshoppers have got these big legs for jumping, and you often find them on vegetation itself. They're regarded as hemimetabolic A, which means that they have eggs and then a few nymphal stages before becoming an adult, but they live in the same sort of environment as the adults. So the youngsters will just become smaller versions of the adults until eventually getting wings, and then they become, we just had a bit of a screen error there, sorry. And before getting wings and then becoming reproductive. So they go through many, many small stages. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that crickets are the same. I'm having a little bit of a blank on my cricket knowledge right now. All I know is crickets make a lot of noise, and whenever you come close, they stop making noise. But my knowledge of crickets, I'm afraid, is quite limited. But I will have a little read about it inside my book, see if I can find some information on crickets. But they look very, very different, for starters. I haven't found a picture yet, Bex. It's going to take me a minute or two. Give me 1 second. Okay. I've got some types of crickets. Okay, so here are some types of crickets. King crickets, some people in Johannesburg will know some of these things as Parktown prawns, which are quite revolting and not many people like them. They don't have the same jumping ability. They don't jump, they do live out in the vegetation as well. These are corn crickets or king crickets, Parktown prawns. Let me just turn the page. Here we have some more, but they don't jump like grasshoppers do. And the crickets I've met, for example, these Parktown prawn type of things, actually secrete or give off a substance that is actually very distasteful. It smells very, very bad. And I actually used to have friends who, this individual right here, it's called the Parktown prawn, and they are quite important out there. They feed on organic material, more on sort of dead organic material rather than on living material in the way grasshoppers do. And I've had friends, fully grown males, that we were inside our house and the cat brought one of these in, and suddenly these two fully grown males turned into screaming little children as they jumped on the couch to try to get away from this very scary looking creature. Oh, they're not that scary, but they give off quite a bad smell. And Bex doesn't like them. Bex is saying they're very, very scary. So let's go over to Brent and see if he thinks Parktown prawns are scary.
I think they're just a big cricket. Corn crickets are far more fearsome than a Parktown prawn, although they're related. And we do get explosions of them every now and then. It was a first year in Djuma, we had a lot of those big corn crickets around. Now, are you guys ready? Because the drama is now in full swing. So I was told by the guys in the east that they thought the tracks were from the Birmingham boys. So I was like, okay, maybe they did that big loop. But they're not. They found them. It is the Avoca male's first trip down south, and roaring the whole way. The Birminghams are apparently down around the Sand River, so this is going to get interesting. And it means the line dynamics are now in for a serious shake-up. It's going to be very, 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 very much full of drama over the next few weeks. I remember the first time the Birminghams did this. Boom! Went across, and pandemonium ensued with the Matimbas coming back and roaring and scent marking and roaring and fighting. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. This is, as far as we know, the Avoca's first trip down south. They are probably only a kilometre from the Mala Mala boundary. So very, very interesting times. Now, apparently the Styx Pride are not too far from them as well. So all sorts of nonsense might happen today. Now that it's got cold, we're going to hear roars and alarm calls in the night from a lot further than we did during the summer months, Minamu. But a human being can hear a lion at about probably 10 kilometers, a little bit more, but it's very soft and it's sort of... And if we can hear them at 10 kilometers, another lion can probably hear them at 20. So, we have decided to come see if we can find some leopard tracks. The last leopard tracks I had last night were around Gwari Pan. And I think those those Avokas have come straight out of the Manileti down. I wouldn't be surprised if Rolf finds tracks on Buffelshoek boundary, and then they've come straight down Cheetah Cut Line the whole way and crossed down south. So interesting times ahead with the lion dynamics. Now, it's not really about which coalition is more likely to survive the battle, Carol. It's about whether the Birminghams feel that it's worth the effort of keeping the territory up north. Whether they've got new prides down to the south, and there's a lack of lions to the west because the Majinga lions are pretty much done. That one very skinny, scraggly male that we saw on drive, who looks like he was on death's door, hasn't been seen since then. His coalition partners died. The one Matimba is also looking bedraggled. So I would say that it's whether the Birminghams decide to abandon this northern area and take over the area around the Sand River to the west and to the east. Let's have a look. Last leopard tracks I had were around here, so that's more the question. Now, there'll probably be one or two scuffles or at least roaring matches at each other, but whether the Birminghams decide that keeping hold of the sticks, Torchwoods and Inkahumas is worth their effort when they have got bigger prides, more females further to the south, and more buffalo at the moment. What is that dog? It is a disappearing duiker. Oh, they're so quick. Davy, you're so slow. You're just back from leave. We just have to beat David. That's a very interesting question from Anya, whether a pride would defend a coalition that they preferred. It's not so much that they prefer a coalition, it happens to be that coalition is father to a lot of the cubs. And if the coalition was with the pride at the time of the attack by new males, yes, sometimes the females will definitely get involved. If they're not, they will skedaddle and try make sure there's as much space between them and the new coalition as possible. Now, we can't be 100% sure, but we're pretty certain that the Avokas have already killed the youngest Inkahuma, that young female, and all those females and that young male are all in serious danger at this moment, with the Avokas coming this far into their home range. Now, until those females get sort of at least 2.5, 3, those males will kill them to try force the females to come into estrus again. So it is going to be a very interesting time. And lion wars can be quite traumatic because, as we saw with the Birmingham takeover, with the Birmingham takeover, what happened was that when the Birminghams came in, they killed 3 Inkahuma lionesses, including the youngest adult female of the Inkahuma Pride's sister, same littermate. She was killed near Sibambili. Now, it is to do almost solely with mating, Cat. They want the Avokas are now sort of getting to 5-ish. They want a territory of their own with females of their own, that they can now start ensuring that their genetics are passed on. So it's almost solely to do with mating. The food availability is pretty much the same all over the place. You might find there's a strong coalition to the north of them in the Manuleti that they are don't really want to take on, and the fact that the Birminghams are spending so little time in this area is another reason why it's prime for a takeover at the moment. Well, no tracks just yet of any leopards. Now, if you remember, Rolf was quite good at getting stuck while in the Mara, and it seems like he's found the only muddy road on Djuma.
Well, thanks, Brent, and yes, and everybody knows that my motto is, if you ain't getting stuck, you ain't trying hard enough. Because I tell you what, for those that say, I don't get stuck, well, then you're not really 4x4ing, are you? So I definitely go looking for those muddy tracks. I really love getting involved and getting stuck in the middle of it, but this little guy has just been watching us. Not very little, is he? He's quite a very beautiful looking Nyala bull. And these are one of the animals that we do also get in the Masai Mara. And it's nice to see one here. Beautiful, standing right out in the sunshine. And what a poser he is. Nyala are such elegant animals. It's always lovely to sit and watch them, especially in such beautiful light like this morning. He's starting to get those little white tips on the end of his horns, and that generally tells you that he is coming into his prime, getting a bit older, and they say those little ivory tips start appearing. Now, Nyala will use those horns every now and then when they can't settle their battles through their elegant dance, as a lot of the guides have shown you in different ways and forms. Whether watching the Nyala or actually performing it themselves, I haven't performed my rendition of the Nyala bull dance, but I will do it at some stage. Now, I have come down. We're heading towards Central Road. When we were on the Gowrie cut line, we did see some lion tracks, probably a day or two old. You know, we've had some spluttering of rain. Well, I've found out from everybody else that we have. And it seems that they were walking on the road when there was a little bit of wetness around while it was raining. They've pressed into it. It seems there's 2 or 3 of them. And something quite exciting not far from here, we also saw a young leopard's tracks. Now, I haven't even seen the little Tandi's cub, and I'm wondering if it's possibly her tracks that are not too far from here, but in the vicinity of lions. Hopefully she's quite savvy around them. But this area starting to show a little bit more sign of movement and tracks on the road. So I'm feeling a little bit more enthusiastic that we're going to find something in this particular area. Now, that was the first nice big antelope that we spotted, so that's always a good sign that there's some more animals around. And I'm going to go down this muddy track, as Brent says, but it's not very wet for the time being, so I don't think I'll have any problem. Won't even have to engage diff lock, I don't think. But those wet tracks in the Masai Mara are absolute joy to ride in. Yes, and the luggers too, or the dongers as we call them on this side. They're quite interesting and fun to get through, or not, when you don't get through them and you sit tight, or sit vas, as we say here in Afrikaans. Sit vas in the mud, and then you got to work out how you're going to be getting out. Get that high lift jack working, and hopefully have something flat that you can use to lift up your wheels and get some rocks underneath, or something hard. You know, I went out with, it was Manu. We went. We had some paperwork that we needed to go and sort out with the authorities in the Masai Mara, and we went through and we got stuck in a lugger. It was quite a big hole that we got stuck in, so we managed to get the front of the vehicle up, but we were looking around for rocks and there were literally none. So we saw a carcass a little way off. It seemed like it might have been a giraffe carcass, but the bones were very scattered, and we brought those big bones back and put them under the wheels, and voila, it worked like a charm. So Manu, if you're watching, don't forget the bones. If you're stuck for rocks in the Masai Mara, just look for some bones. They work just as well, but I don't think little antelope bones would work very well. You'd need quite a lot of them, but luckily for us we found giraffe bones, which are nice and big and filled the hole and got us out of there in a jiffy. We were quite proud of ourselves, and that's the joy of getting stuck, when you get yourself out. And speaking of getting stuck or not getting stuck, let's send you on over to Brent, who'd never get stuck.
So that's how the cameramen tell us we're live when we're off the vehicle. I think this means link coming, David, is that correct? And then you didn't give me the live. You just went, pew, you're on. Okay. Good news, we found Tandi and Tlalamba's tracks. I'm just trying to figure out where they're going. They look quite fresh from this morning. So we're just trying to figure out where she's going. She's unfortunately going into the most horrible block in the whole of Djuma, where she's been hiding for a long time. But I didn't see her tracks up there, so she's obviously just ducked straight in. So we're going to go have a turn around and have a quick look there. I would show you the tracks, but the ground is quite difficult to see them nicely on. So you're not going to be able to see them with the camera. They're very, very faint. But yay, leopard tracks. And fresh leopard tracks, which is always better than yesterday's leopard tracks that someone has driven over. That is, I think, one of my pet peeves. So we're on these leopard tracks now, and with all the lion shenanigans, Gary, it shouldn't affect the leopards too much. At these sort of times, the lions are generally pretty focused on each other, so the leopards should be absolutely dandy. Now, that tracks are heading straight into that area between Gwari Pan and Drakensberg Road. And she spent a bit of time in there, and at the moment with the really long grass, it is not easy in there, but it's good to see tracks of both of them together. I did hear some testiculars alarming. I had a quick look as we were coming past, but not too carefully. So look, little Tlalamba footprints. So I know Rolf hasn't seen little Tlalamba yet. I've only seen it once. Now I think they've gone down this little path here, because I didn't see any tracks. You can see there's a nice little path going through there. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to have a look to see if there's any sort of brush off of the dew, and that'll tell me how fresh it is. So I'm going to have a quick look here. Meanwhile, Steve is doing some game viewing from the tent.
Yes, I couldn't help myself. We got this herd of wildebeest that's just come past, probably about 50 meters or so, 50 yards from the tent, and they're just doing their thing. They have no idea that we're here. Maybe they do, maybe they don't really care. And this is something that those male lions would most definitely be interested in snacking on. Nice herd of wildebeest just here, having a little bit of a munch. The one individual there was busy rubbing its face up against the tree. Golden tail woodpecker just called up to my left. I don't know if you heard that off my mic. It's quite difficult to hear off my lapel. Wildebeest grazing in the early morning light. I think they're quite happy that they can hear the lions calling from kilometers away. They know that they're not in any immediate danger. I was actually just trying to find an image on the computer screen there to try and show you the sort of the morphology or the physiology of how the cat is able to roar with their chest. Hopefully I'll find you a picture there and we can discuss that, because the Panthera order gives them that ability to roar, and how it works is actually very, very, very interesting. Okay, I'm getting a look now. I'm going to leave them to their morning breakfast. Thanks for that, Ferg. Got to get our spot out in the sunshine as well from our safari tent. It's important in the morning as I walk past the drone. Good morning, drone. Have you all seen this before? Marvelous piece of machinery. Ferg was going to let me have a go earlier, but I'm only joking. I don't quite have the qualifications. So I've got something, if you still want to do a segment, I've got something very interesting underneath the microscope. We were talking about, well, I haven't really shown you this before. Look at this. This is a gall wasp from a terminalia, from the silver cluster leaf. And if you look up in the sort of the middle top rightish, there's actually a larva moving inside there, or a pupa moving inside there. Can you see that movement? It's incredible. This is the gall I took off of one of the cluster leaves, silver cluster leaves just close by, just to have a look at how interesting these sort of shapes and structures are. Because the wasps are known as parasitoid wasps, or that gall wasps are parasitoids in a way. Not really, they're not parasitoids. Parasitoids is something that lays their eggs inside something and kills it. But they basically the female will mate with the male. Necessarily in gall wasps, they actually might not even have males. They are able to maybe get past all of that with just being female, which I think is marvelously interesting. And they'll oviposit a laid egg inside the tree itself, inside the bark. And what that does is it causes all sorts of hormones and all sorts of chemical sort of changes in the plant, and it forces it to build these galls, which are then the gall wasp, which you can see there, goes through from an egg to a larvae, and then will pupate, feeding on the gall itself, on all the nutrients and nourishment that the plant is pushing to that area that has kind of been damaged in a way, and they're completely survival for that, and then emerge after their pupation as an adult gall wasp, which I think is absolutely marvelous. And getting to see it up close like that, I'm assuming it's the pupa. Can you see it moving there? I've never quite seen this before, but just on this section over here, you'll see that there's a ball inside there that seems to be moving from time to time. If you keep a lookout for that piece that I was looking at. We're going to go back to the microscope now. I think it might look a little bit better on that screen. I don't know if I can point at it with a piece of grass. Maybe I can. Let's see if I can do that. Yes, this one here. Inside that ball there, have a look at that thing that moves. I think it's rather interesting. I don't want to move it around too much because I think this is quite a good sort of look at it, but it's really, really small. We have to look at it with the naked eye. You can't really see what's going on in there. But marvelous, the technology, and as Brent says, the toys that the boys have to play with. Okay, well, it seems Ralph has got more movement than I do. Let's go to him and his termite mound.
Yes, and well, it's one of my favorite little small mammals, and this one, the dwarf mongoose, which we also had in the Masai Mara. We didn't see much of them at all, but they've got a very different color to them. It's like an olive color, almost the same color as the olive baboons that are there. Now, there's one of them that's got a little funny growth behind his ear. There he is, just on the right there, on the bottom there. Excuse me. I wonder, sometimes you can get that when maybe he's been bitten there, and then it's lost the hair and then turned into that little bit of a growth, or it could be something a little bit more sinister. But as we are doing, also just waking up in the nice and enjoying the nice early morning sunshine, and these guys doing exactly the same, and they're almost the experts at enjoying the early morning. Julie, you're absolutely on the button. These guys are so cute and entertaining, but just watch when they yawn. They've got those very sharp teeth that they can use to dispatch anything from a scorpion to a snake. And I wonder when we're going to see some of the hornbills popping in, because they love to be around the dwarf mongoose. A very good relationship between the Tokus hornbills. And this one heading off, yes, on a bit of an adventure. Rebecca saying in FC, he's heading off on his own little adventure. I think he's a little bit of one of those eccentric guys that he's got his own ideas, a little bit different to the group. Doesn't move with the masses. And Carol, you're wondering if they eat termites. I believe they will, especially when you start to see the alates coming out after the rains. When they come out in their hordes and their hundreds and thousands of them, they'll feed on that. Very tasty and very good source of protein. Now, if you've ever seen the African termites and the fungus cultivators especially, they've got a very fat abdomen, and they taste of peanut butter. So not distasteful at all, and some of the locals eat them quite regularly. And if you were out in the bush, there was a very good indication of those spiky teeth. If you're out in the bush and you are getting a little bit hungry, you can always just have a little snack on some termites. I'm not a fan, but I have been hungry, and it does really hit the spot. If you have yourself 10 or 20 termites, it's really quite filling. Now look how they're all banded up together. And speaking of banded, that was the more common mongoose that we saw in the Masai Mara, and but they were also a lot more skittish. Very difficult to get close to them, and it was quite rare that you could actually sit and watch them in an instance like this, where they're all just enjoying each other's company, enjoying the morning air. Julie's wondering if mongoose suffer from mange. Julie, I believe that most mammals will be able to contract mange, mange being a skin disease or disorder, and generally affecting populations when their condition is down. For instance, when the resources are low, when there's been a drought, or that's one of the times that they generally pick up mange. They might also get a lot more ticks, and then that's when your natural selection and survival of the fittest starts making sure that only the strongest genes go through those difficult periods. And then in times of plentiful once more, you start to get all the strong genes from those populations that survived. So mange being another one of those controlling factors in natural systems, and I believe they would be able to get it, but I'm not entirely sure. I know that jackals get it, I know that lions get it, I know that most mammals will get it, and I'm pretty sure that they will get it as well. A little bit of digging. Very well adapted diggers are these mongoose. Michael, you're putting forward quite a good angle, and maybe that growth coming from an insect bite. It could be, when you get stung by a wasp, sometimes it makes a bit of a callus afterwards, and quite the tissue below the skin actually hardens up and forms a callus-like structure. That's a very good angle there. So, and look at those claws, very well adapted to digging. Now, that's not only there for digging out their burrow. And that would also be for digging out grubs and worms and termites and ants and all sorts. So they need the very well adapted feet and claws to be able to get and access their food. And you can see them, they're all digging and scratching around all the time. Maybe some termites in this mound as well. But they will also obviously scratch too, just to keep their claws in good nick. And they also aloe groom. They're also, you can see, a lot of olfactory checking of the sort of nether regions. They're constantly checking who's who in the zoo, where in the social structure you are. A very tight-knit unit, but there will be a dominant hierarchy within them as well. Nice little youngsters there. Look at that one. How cute is that? Very nice. King Pod wondering how many generations there are here. I can see, I think, at least 3. With the little youngsters and the sort of a year or 2 older than them, and then the full-on adults, I would say. But I would guess that there could be even up to 5 generations, but probably more likely around 3 or 4. But they do breed and are quite successful, and that's quite nice to know. And one of the reasons being is that they look out for each other. And once again, I'd like Senzo just to go off and have a look up on top of the branch there. Now, we were saying that maybe he's off on his own, doing his own little thing, but more importantly, that I was just making a joke, but more importantly, you've always got a lookout with mongoose, and somebody's standing sentry, looking out for any dangers, while the rest of them can then relax and go about their daily business. And they'll obviously change that around. So he'll do his duty, and then we'll have another changing of the guard. One of the other ones would possibly come up and take that. Now, as I said, very good social structure system, everybody looking out for each other, social grooming. They assist in finding food together, they assist in the breeding, looking after the youngsters, building of their den site, etc. So, or their burrow. So that's the reason why they are successful. It's because of that close-knit unit. Very good eyesight, very good smell. I would say that those are probably their 2 best senses, and obviously still having a third being very good hearing as well. And it's very acute, especially with little animals like this. They can pick up things that we wouldn't even know existed. And very alert, but quite late risers, I must say. They're all seemingly just starting their day, and I've been up for a good 3 hours, going on 3.5 hours. So these guys should be fresh, I would imagine. They probably also disappear into their burrow quite early as well. Mushcat wondering if they suckle their young or if they eat salad from birth. No, they will suckle their young. That's one of the mammal's characteristics. So definitely suckling their young. And I think they even sort of allo suckle as well. So a different female with different young could suckle on youngsters that aren't her own, and then slowly get weaned, and they will be fed a range of different things, from little grubs to worms, and they aren't really salad eaters. They are carnivorous, so don't really go onto the salad side of things, unless the little insects and things that they eat have got some salad inside them. That might then potentially be eaten, but they are heavily carnivorous, and as I said, they can eat birds, they can eat snakes, they can eat worms. You know, they will also go for the dung beetle grubs, the worms that they put off into their dung balls and bury under the ground. Now we've got some hyena calling just nearby. Now, everybody, this is so exciting, and I want to see if any of the hornbills come in and join them on their morning business. But we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to sit here, and I'm sure we'll be here when you come back. Let's head you on over to Brent and see if he hasn't got stuck. I'm sure he hasn't.
Yes, Ralph, yes. No, we're desperately still searching for any sign of Thandi. I'm just making sure that she hasn't come up here to the north, off the road, instead of going into that area she normally hangs out in. We're just going to do a quick little trip down here, and then we're going to loop back around towards Central. When she goes into that block, she can be in there for days. So it might be worth taking a walk there a little later. So, apologies for not having all the eye contact. I know how desperate everyone is to see Thandi and Tlalamba, me too, so I'm really concentrating on seeing if we can find her this morning. So I just wanted to check here quickly. Make sure there are no tracks. There's a large game path that comes off from where we were and joins up with this road, so I'm going to check there. But it is very exciting. Well, I wonder what Steve's got now under the microscope.
we had that. Oh, there we go. Look on the left of the screen. That is not what we're looking at. We had what I thought was the larvae or pupa of the wasp came out the middle one. It was a whitish-looking beetle that backed out backwards. And as soon as you decided to come to me, Brent, he went back inside. It was very interesting. I mean, it's a term known as inquilism, where an animal lives inside of something that was created by another animal. For example, crabs living in shells in the ocean, hermit crabs. We call it inquilism, where you live inside something that was created by a living organism. And what I thought was the larvae is in fact a beetle that popped out backwards, and he's seemingly living quite happily and quite safely inside this exposed gall that, here we go. You can see his bottom moving a little bit. I wonder if he's going to come out again. But it appears to me that because all these holes are open, that the wasps have already sort of bored themselves out and exposed themselves and left. And there's a little ant in the bottom left. I wonder if he's going to show himself. So this beetle is finding a nice safe haven inside the galls that have been left by the wasps that have most likely hatched and fledged and pupated and become adults to move off. And that word I was trying to use before, I must just double check it because I had it wrong for a second and I don't want to get it wrong. Parthenogenic. Okay, parthenogenetic, sorry. That is when female wasps don't generally need the males, so they'll have one or two males, if any. Sometimes they don't even use males for years, and they are able to mate and reproduce like that, producing only female offspring and continuing like that. It's quite a marvelous sort of strategy. You can see the beetle backing out slowly once again. All we saw initially in the beginning was just the real back of the carapace there. I have no idea what beetle is, and there's our little ant friend on the bottom. It's marvelous what we can see with this microscope. It does, Samu. Samu, age 9, it does look like coral from the ocean. And coral from the ocean is a similar sort of strategy. It is also living, and it is amazing refuge for all sorts of creatures in the ocean. I would not assume to know too much about coral myself, but there's huge amounts of area for organisms to live in, and that would also be called inquilism, where animals live inside of structures formed by living organisms. And I don't know if this little beetle is going to show himself. He's being very, very shy. But nonetheless, we have a lot of patience. I have more leaves and things to show us. I can show you the size of the gall wasp now. Here is the actual gall. There it is. That is what we're looking at under the microscope. And that little white patch just over there, that is that beetle. So incredibly small. Just that one over there. Incredibly small. And you can see how beautiful this is indeed. Okay, so we're going to go from our very small gall wasp gall and over to a very small carnivore.
Very small carnivore indeed. Thanks, Steve. And like I said, everyone, it didn't go anywhere. And look how this one's just staring straight at us. And I've been waiting for the hornbills to come down and join us, but we haven't been joined by them, but we've been joined by another one of the unlikely characters, and that's the fork-tailed drongo. And he's been sitting here mimicking all sorts of different birds, but also, I think, hanging around these mongoose, because he knows that where they move, there's going to be all sorts of insects getting bumped out. And he's been mimicking all sorts of other birds. I heard him doing a red bush willow, and an orange-breasted bush. Geez, like now bush shrike. I'm getting them all mixed up. And a crested barbet. He's doing the chickrrr. But it's been wonderful to see, and you always see this little bit of interaction between the birds and the mongoose. And every now and then they all just scoot back down into the den, but this drongo just hanging around. Craig and Amanda wondering if mongoose related to the meerkats. Yes, well, absolutely, they are meerkats. Meerkat is actually the word. It's an Afrikaans word meaning directly translated meer meaning lake and kat meaning cat, and it's probably based around the water mongoose where it's probably first come from. So we generalize saying meerkats for the mongoose. So it is a mongoose, and they're all in that exact same group. Now, it seems like they've all just gone down into their hole, maybe because of a bird of prey. And speaking of bird of prey, Brent's got one. Let's head on over to him, and we'll be here when you get back.
It's my favorite bird of prey, and definitely a predator of mongoose, or should I say my favorite eagle. It is an African hawk eagle. Now, their nest is not far from here, and it's uncommon to see one by itself, so I'm pretty sure the other is close by. So where they nested 2 years ago is very close. So yeah, they're monogamous, like a lot of the Aquila eagles. Oh, where are you off to? They're still there. Now, they're very, very territorial eagles, and will defend their territory against other pairs of African hawk eagle and even other species of eagle. And they've been recorded with those incredibly large talons catching prey of up to 4 kilograms. Now, one of their favorite foods is guinea fowl. And 61% of what a hawk eagle eats is birds. So you will hear all the birds' alarm call if this hawk eagle flies too far. Let's just try it. What do you think? Back a little bit. You think you see the other one? Oh, well spotted, Darby. As I said, there we go. I said it's very unusual to see one by itself. Let me just go forward. How's that? Oh, no. We're off. Well, one's off. One's still there. Heading directly... Oh, there goes the next one. heading directly towards the nest site. Let's see if we can see their nest. You used to be able to see it from Central Road, which is where I'm on my way to check for Tundi. But it's definitely my favorite eagle that occurs here at Djuma. Oh, very, very pretty. As I said, they eat a lot of guinea fowl and a lot of birds. About 60% of their diet in this area is birds, and a lot of that will be your game birds, guinea fowl, francolin being two of their favorites. And being a pair, they can use cooperative hunting strategies quite effectively, where one will distract by flying conspicuously while the other comes through the trees. I'm just doing a quick check for Tundi's tracks here. Now, as I said, they are monogamous, but yes, Russin, if one of them dies, the other will still try find another mate. They take the whole death do us part thing quite seriously. It's in there, Darv. Can you get it? It's a bit difficult. No, back tree. I'm just trying to find a gap. There we go. A little window for the African hawk eagle. Oh, dropped down to the ground. Something might have just died. Wonder what happened there. Now, I don't want to drive in there because we will... I don't want to drive in there because it might scare off. If they have caught something on the ground, they might fly off and leave their hard-earned prey. So we're just going to have to live in wonder. Now, it's very difficult to say, Sabi, whether the monogamous birds are around the same age. Possibly, but as I say, if one dies or whatnot, and they might mate with an older individual, so it's very difficult to say whether they are always around the same age. Okay, so now Central is one of the tougher roads to see tracks on at the moment, so I'm going to have to go very slowly, although I'm pretty convinced that they're still in here somewhere, close to that little river system that comes out from below Gwari Pan, and then eventually joins the river system from Buffelshoek Dam, just above Central Junction, and then obviously carries on down into the Mawati. Now, that's the same little river system where Hosanna and Shongile were born, but lower down. Still desperately hoping for a kudu bark or a nyala bark. Now, their nest, the African hawk eagle nest, is, where was it last time? So you see that little group of acacias there, Dave? You can't really see it, but it is in that little copse of acacias. It's where they nested. Well, I'm not sure about last year because I wasn't here, but the year before. Okay, we're going to keep desperately searching for Tundi. And while we do that, Steve has got something green and veined under the microscope.
Indeed, we do, and I think we are straight onto the microscope view, and we are looking at the underside of a leaf, and I wonder how many of you out there will be able to tell me what type of leaf it might be with regards to its structure. But what I'm finding amazing is this little interesting green thing that is attached to the leaf that is dancing around. It's almost like it's attached with a bit of silk, and it is alive. don't think it's the wind that's moving it. It is jumping around. I have no idea what it is. Anybody know what that is? A jumping? Bex think it's a jumping bean. Well, Bex, it's a very small bean, if it is a bean. It might actually be responding to my breath. Yeah, that is definitely my breath. So I don't know what it is. It's attached to the leaf, but I think it's absolutely marvelous. The reason why I wanted to show you the leaf is we're looking at a sicklebush leaf. Looking at a sicklebush leaf, I'm just going to try and focus in and show you how divided the leaf is. And, we talk about surface area. And if we go and we take this silver cluster leaf, you see the surface area seems quite large, doesn't it? We look at that and go, ooh, a marvelous surface area. But which one do you think has got the largest surface area? Actually, definitely this one, because it is divided. It is divided and divided and divided. Our lungs, inside our lungs, are divided into little lamellae and all sorts of things, or alveoles and things. Our tummy as well, our stomach, the rumen in most animals are divided into small things which far increase the surface area. And there you can still see that little jumping thing on the side. No idea what it is. But let's put this underneath the microscope and see if surface area is even more increased when we look closely at the leaf. And we're going to focus in here quickly. There we go. Focused. And there, have a look. Furthermore, the leaves which are divided, again, you can see the hairs. Now, the hairs actually enable protection from moisture loss because they kind of form like a sort of barrier or a humidity layer that traps moisture and also prevents heat from taking too much moisture away from the plant. And also those small leaflets that you can see, they also in times of stress are able to fold themselves flat to reduce the amount of moisture that they can lose. I'm just going to turn the leaf over quickly and we'll see the other side, and you'll see how on the other side there are also very fine hairs. So nice to be able to look at these leaves in a... There we go. Look at those hairs. They almost look sharp, don't they? They look furry. The hairs protect the plant against what we call desiccation from the sun. Also, they trap moisture, like I said. And the surface area with those hairs is even further increased. Not just the divided once leaf, then the leaf divided twice. Then there's even hairs which maximize the surface area. So these plants are able to pull huge amounts of moisture from the soil, which means they're able to access huge amounts of nutrients. And this plant is from the sicklebush, and we do know the sicklebush is a legume. And if I was able to pull, sorry about the wind there, folks, if I was able to pull the roots out from the ground of the legume, you'd find, and look underneath the microscope, you'd be able to see the roots would have all sorts of nodules from the rhizobacteria, which is forming on the roots, which helps to fix nitrogen. So not only do these plants have lots of leaf access and water pulling power, they also have very, very fine root systems, which the roots themselves are like my fingers, and then the small hairs coming off of them are the mycorrhiza bacteria, which each plant has a specific sort of species that associates with them. So they can pull the water through, and they've got access in the soil that's pulling huge amounts of nutrients in. So these nitrogen fixers do very, very well out in these dry climates, and they don't need to lose their leaves if there's lots of water, but they can lose them or fold them up. The bouncing, jumping thing was kind of a greenish yellow tinge to it. I'm not sure, no idea. I've never seen one of them before. I was having a look at the plant underneath the microscope, and lo and behold, a little funny creature revealed itself. It's almost like it's a cocoon of furs and the hairs. Brad, not all plants. Well, we can have a look. I'm going to show you another leaf. Let's quickly just focus in on this one. This is the silver cluster leaf. And let me just focus it in there. Look at all those furs, all those hairs. And sorry about the... There we go. You can see even down that mid vein there is very, very hairy. and all over the leaf it's got that sort of whitish hair. Now, what we do know is that some plants will have white fur or hairs, some will have white powder, and white powder or white fur like that actually reflects a huge amount of the light spectrum. So it aids these plants in still able to photosynthesize, because the green of the spectrum still goes through, which is the area which the plant needs. But the reds and the harsh light spectrum actually get repelled by the fur. So it really, really helps these trees in living in dry climates. They can still photosynthesize, but yet they're very well protected against the harsh UV and infrared light. Okay, so let's go over to another one who's sunbasking. Let's go to Brent Leo Smith.
Yes, he's enjoying a very good sunbath this morning. It is a giant plated lizard. Isn't he pretty? Now, very interestingly, you've been watching those dwarf mongoose with Rolf, and I'm sure he spoke about the hornbill's relationship with dwarf mongoose. Giant plated lizards also have a very, very strong bond with dwarf mongoose, and they often share the same dens. Now, what the dwarf mongoose gives to the giant plated lizard is a huge amount of food. They will eat the feces inside the den. They will keep the den clean and tidy, removing all the feces and stuff like that. And the mongoose obviously win because they get nannies, I'm sorry, not nannies, but housekeeping for free from the giant plated lizard. And of course, they're not always together because the dwarf mongoose have different dens that they use from time to time. But when they are in the same den, almost 60-70% of a giant plated lizard's food is made up of mongoose scat. Moment, it was a chilly night last night. So definitely need to recharge those solar panels. Yes, it is a very cool lizard, indigo girl and Tim, and it's one of the biggest lizards we get here outside, of course, of the monitor family. And you can see how it gets the name plated. You can see the armor plating on it. Now, those African hawk eagles we saw a little bit earlier would also munch on this guy if they got the opportunity. Now, if you look carefully behind its leg there, you can actually see its heart beating, Amanda. So it is very much alive, but it is sun tanning. It's warming up to get the energy it needs for the day. So it is just keeping very still. It's not dead at all. You can actually see the heartbeat every now and then just behind the leg, just to the left of the leg. You just see, doop, there we go. Doop. Very much enjoying the morning sun. And see there's some little ants scurrying about it as well. A bit small for it to snack on. They are very, very cool lizards. Now we're going to leave the lizard to continue its morning bask. And we're going to keep heading towards up in Nyala Road North. Don't think we're going to find any tracks of Tundi, but it's always worth checking. And then I'm going to go back to where we had those last tracks and maybe take a little stroll through the wet grass. You don't want to walk through the wet grass this morning. But no, Ravinda, they won't attack snakes. Quite a few snakes will actually eat them as well as eating the dwarf mongoose. It will eat small blind snakes, and thread snakes. Yes, it would eat those, but your bigger snake species it won't attack. It'll try to get away from. Oh, there we go, quickly all the way around to that little weeping wattle. Okay, no, too far to the right. Zoom. Then you see the little bird there. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Out a little bit, Davy, to the right. There we go. A little bit up. Davikins? I need to get you glasses, I think. I think so. Yeah, it was a little bar throw to the palace, which is now gone. I definitely think we need to get David a pair of glasses. Yes. Don't shake your camera at me, David. I'll sort you out. Yes. Rebecca says you can have ones that match Rolf. Okay. Oh, shame. It's such a pretty bird. Let's see if there's another one there. No. Okay. Well, Amanda, I'm not sure how big the lizard's heart is. I've never dissected a lizard and don't plan to. But you'll probably find with the reptiles, and it's you notice the heartbeat's very slow while it warms up. It's not expending much energy. Now Joy is asking how big is it compared to my hand. It's probably in total about 30 centimeters, about the length of a ruler. So a bit bigger than my hand. Probably there. Probably 2 hands. Okay, so unfortunately we're going to have to send you away because there are some gremlins that live further down on this road. But we'll just go slowly for now. We're okay for another minute or so. Oh, so unfortunately Rolf seems here with the gremlins. So poor Steve is just going to have to hold the show for us till we get out.
I hope you didn't mean old Steve there, Brent. That's not very nice. You're only 2 years younger than me, young sir. And Ralph is the same age as me, so be careful talking to your elders. Okay, so we are back in the tent. Ferg is the same age as us as well. So there's a few oldies around.
I'm more mature than you guys.
And
I'm not older
Ferg
than you.
feels he's a bit more mature than the rest of us. He's just there with the steady cam. And it appears Ralph is not familiar with how the signal is affecting us at the moment, and he will learn where and not the good signal areas are. But we are back in the tent, and we're still talking about leaves, because leaves are very, very interesting. Now, I've put another leaf under the microscope, and there are characteristics of this leaf that are quite interesting and easy to identify. Let's jump onto the microscope, please, Bex, and have a look at a magic guari leaf, and you can see all those little red dots. Now, what the red dots are exactly are called excretory cavities. And when identifying certain plants in the book, they'll actually ask you a question, excretory cavities present or absent. And they look like just little sort of pixels on the bottom of the leaf. And what they are responsible for is for many types of things. So whenever you get an aroma out of a plant, it's coming out of the secretory cavity. So from like lemon and orange plants, that is where it's coming from. Poisons as well as tannins are also excreted from those little cavities. And that's why when we taste the guari leaf, it is so bitter and very disgusting to eat. But also in carnivorous plants, when they provide a certain form of nectar that attracts ants or flies to the plant, that is where the secretory cavity actually produces that nectar, and then the Venus flytrap style thing closes like that. So when looking at leaves, very important to look at those little dots underneath. It's either there or it's not. It's either visible or not. You should actually be able to see it with the naked eye. If we can just get this in some light. Sorry, Ferg. Difficult. You can see the little dots. So if I was looking at this and I was trying to identify it, I'd look at it in the light, lift it up like that, and you'll actually see little spots there. It's quite obvious to see. I've shown you the leadwood, a little pixel underneath the leaves, and if we look at one of the other leaves, it doesn't have it. So those are things that are either there or not. In a lot of the croton species that you find, the large leaf croton and the small leaf croton, you definitely find pixels underneath, and also in the guari plants because of the tannin that they give off. I'm surprised I didn't see one in the silver cluster leaf though. Saw lots and lots of hairs, but no secretory cavities. I wonder if they are part and parcel of those plants, but doesn't seem to be. There we are, back onto the silver cluster leaf. I have zoomed in a little bit more. Let's just go look at all those hairs. But we spoke about it last time. I did some microscope work, and you can actually see that very interesting network that is on the leaf there, almost like the Okavango Delta from the sky, so to speak. And each leaf has got a unique sort of patterning. And when looking at animal dung, when you're trying to find out what animals have been feeding on, you can actually look quite closely to see what the pattern is, and you can identify it in the animal dung and see what they're feeding on. And now, who cares? You want to know if our leaves change color? Well, we do have a few leaves that will change color. A lot of them just fall off the tree, but the bush willows, most certainly the bush willows we find on the top of the slopes, will change color into sort of an autumny sort of brown, and then they will fall down. But it's not as dramatic here as it is in the northern hemisphere. A lot of our trees here, as soon as the moisture disappears, it's more of a moisture than a seasonal thing, and as soon as the moisture drops, because the purpose of those leaves is to drag water up from deep underneath the ground and to bring it to the surface, and as soon as the roots stop getting that water, the leaves just desiccate, they go brown, they fall off the tree, and then that is the way it goes. And if you get moisture through late into the season, for example, further north where we have big Mopani belts, you'll often find that the Mopanis, if there's been a lot of rainfall, the Mopanis stay green for a very, very long time. And as soon as the water table just drops to a certain level, you'll see they'll all go brown, and within a matter of days, most of those trees will lose their leaves. But it's not as dramatic in the savanna as it would be in the northern hemisphere, because that is all got to do with the response, I think, to snow, and snow falling on those trees actually causes damage. So it's a seasonal thing. That's a light variation thing, whereas here it is definitely a moisture. And we've had some late rain, so I'm thinking we're going to have a fair amount of greenness still on the trees for weeks to come. Last night was the first cold spell we had. We all walked out of our rooms and we were like, what's going on? And I made a comment to Eggsy last night. Eggsy, I'm sure you've all heard of Eggsy. He's our editor-in-chief in camp. And we were having a chat last night. I said, I'm sure after a cold spell like last night, a lot of the migratory birds suddenly looked at their calendar and went, holy whack, what's going on? Why are we still here? It is suddenly very cold, and we know why they're still here. It's because there's a huge amount of insects to still be eaten, but I think they suddenly realized that it's a little bit late in the year. Maybe it's time for them to move soon. Blue-rose birds will migrate. So there's a huge number of birds that will move back north, back into Africa, or just into Europe, even as far as Russia. But mammals, they generally move in relation to food. And food resources, as we've seen a little bit of rain lately, we haven't seen many zebra. Elephants have completely disappeared. We can assume that they've gone east, further into the basalts and the gabbro soils, where the soil's very, very lush, very nutrient-rich, provides very good grazing. It's also dominated by sort of small knob thorns. Elephants absolutely love that, and the zebra like the grazing. But other than that, a lot of the animals here will just move further distances for food, but they're constantly coming back to certain areas for the moisture, for the dams. And there was a veterinary fence put up in the west, all the way along the Kruger boundary, very, very long time ago, prevented that natural migration north. But we do see it in the Serengeti, we see it in the Masai Mara. Those animals move, and they're moving for rainfall. They move for the rainfall, and they follow the fresh feeding as it goes around. They don't have the liberty of that here anymore. And all across South Africa, where there once were huge migrations of animals, including springbok, do not occur anymore because of agriculture and because of fences, which is a very sad story, but it is what we're dealing with at the moment, and it is the reason why there are so many more transfrontier parks being formed and so many big reserves dropping fences and joining to make bigger areas for conservation. Because the animals will move if they can. They'll move into an area of better food if they can. The only thing limiting them is the confines of a fence, even though the park is enormously big. I hope that answers your question. Okay, well, Ralph, who has moved from the Mara down to the coast and back up to Djuma, let's go see what he's up to.
Yes, I have. Thank you. And everybody, I'm sorry I just keep driving around, but obviously with the excitement of being back in Djuma and not being here for quite a while, I am obviously trying to cover quite a bit of distance, just trying to get all around the concession and see what's going on. Now, I'm I'm wondering what is going to be the first real cat or big animal that I spot, and I'm hoping that it's a leopard, but never know about those hyenas, hey? They always like to show themselves, but very exciting. And you know, I'm still very excited to see this little cub that Thandi has brought into our lives. And as I was driving now, we did hear some brown-headed parrots, which is very nice to spot. And then I was chatting with Senzo as we were driving along, because he was wondering if parrots are the ones that can talk. So, you know, the brown-headed parrots and the ones that we get here are not in particular, but I'm sure that they are intelligent enough to be trained to do so. But it's all about the mimicking, isn't it? And that's very similar to what we had with the fork-tailed drongo that was sitting next to the dwarf mongoose. Now, I wonder if Senzo can see that. He's just pointed me to turn a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over on the side. Now, remember, I'm just getting my skills better again with all the camera angles, and I wonder if you can see what's there. Unfortunately, he's in the shade and just behind a blade of grass as well. But and there we've got a bit of a two-shot, but there, maybe if we sit here long enough, we might see him going out into the sun. But that's one of our African giant land snails, the biggest one that we get, and they normally show themselves after it has rained, because they will bury themselves in the ground. And then they come out, and you very often see them with a big ball of mud on top of that shell, as they literally just pull themselves out of the soil, and the soil often comes with them. But this one has obviously been out of the ground for a little while and been washed clean by some more rain that has come along. And he's probably also just relaxing in the shade there. He doesn't seem to be moving along at all. If he is, he's going at a real snail's pace. But they've also got quite a high calcium requirement because of the production of that shell. So you can sometimes see them also sitting on some bony pieces of fragments, and even some carnivore scat. They'll be around that, sucking it up. Very interesting animals, and I do believe in some parts they actually people eat them. And I see the tentacles coming out there. Oh, he is moving. Or is he? I think that's us. Is he moving? We should have some snail races. Put another one. I think he is. Yes. Yes, he is. There he goes. Oh. Romit, that's a good question. You're wondering what predators eat a lot of these snails. I'm pretty sure that, you know, honey badgers would, for me, I've never seen them eating one, but I would imagine that honey badgers and the weasel-type animals, even mongoose, but I think, for me, I would hedge my bets on a honey badger being probably quite a prolific eater of these kind of snails. There's also quite a bit of protein in them, and a honey badger is one of those scouring animals. Nothing's going to get past or away from him, and I'm sure he'd pick up quite a lot of these snails. But I must say, I've actually never seen an animal eating an African giant land snail. I've seen a lot of their shells, but never actually actively eating one. KD, you want to know, very good question, do the shells grow with the snail? Yes, it has to. And they're producing that shell. You can almost see, if you look very closely there, there's like ridges. Now, that has been produced sort of one layer after another. So as they grow, another layer is added to that, and it sort of keeps on getting bigger, and it's almost like a slinky. You know, these wire slinkies? It sort of pushes on from the next piece. So that will keep revolving around and growing with the snail and keep on slinking out all the way to the back. So very interesting indeed. And if I'm not mistaken, they've got their heart it's their heart or their brain in their anus. Janessa, you want to know how many species of snail there are in Djuma? I'm sure there's probably the garden snails that have been introduced with with all the lodges and the little private houses and so on. But this African giant land snail is the only one that really that we see around Djuma. There might be some very microscopic ones around little water sources as well, but out in the bush we generally don't see any except the African giant land snail. And this one now seems to be running for cover. Oh, slithering, slimy as he goes. And you can see at the back it's a very interesting track that they have as well. Now he's heading off into the grass there and disappearing off into the roots. And speaking of roots, Steve's got something along those lines.
Yes, well, I've been uprooting in the garden outside of the tent and just trying to have a look at all sorts of wonderful things and comparing certain aspects of grass physiology. And we found a grass and we've put it underneath the microscope. And it's just one of those things when it comes to identifying a grass that they might ask you in the book, does it have hairs on the ligule? And let's have a look. Here we have shown the ligule, and the ligule is basically the junction where the leaf blade meets the stalk. So that is a ligule of hairs that serves as a sort of a function of protection. Where the stalk is growing out of the leaf blade, there is regarded as a growth point on the plant. And so you will find often some grasses have ligule hairs present and some they are absent. And quite often it can be quite noticeable in the form of a ring. Here we are looking at it on a microscope and you can clearly see it. Sometimes it's very obvious with the naked eye. With this grass in particular, this is the gummy grass, which likes to grow in very moist sort of drainage line areas. This one, it is most definitely present. So maybe we should try another one. I have found another grass on the ground, well, that I dug out obviously, and I'm going to swap them over. Shall we swap them over? We got this one. I'm going to put that one down on the ground, and let's put a completely different new species underneath, and let's have a look and see what it will reveal underneath the microscope. Just need to focus it slightly. It's actually nice to prepare these shots. Look at that. Okay, there we go. Let's go on the microscope. There is a completely different grass species altogether, and I'm just going to turn it a little bit. There we go. It's actually far messier. You see how many more hairs there are there. And the very characteristic, if you look in the middle of the screen, there's a very characteristic leaf. You see how longitudinal the veins are. That is one of the characteristics of leaves on grasses, is that they have got longitudinal or lateral venation or veins, and the presence of hairs around the ligule is a nice characteristic when you're comparing one grass versus the other. Now, this grass didn't even have an inflorescence on it. I pulled it up just to see. So it'll be very hard to identify which species this is exactly, but it's actually beautiful. Look how under the microscope how nice and moist it looks. The leaf sheath as well around the ligule also aids in absorbing or catching water, which then when you get those light sort of patterings of rain, it accumulates the water, which will slowly seep down into the very nice sort of roots, adventitious roots you find at the base of a grass sward. Marvelous indeed. And these green parts are the parts that are favored by most of your grazing animals. They're not necessarily feeding on the flower stalk themselves, but they're looking for that green, sugary leaf. which you can see in the middle of the picture. I didn't get that. I just got the purpose of something, Bex. If you can repeat that, please. I don't understand that question, I'm sorry. Marvelous. Well, I'm going to take this one out and just grab another one from underneath and show you the differences between these two and their root structure. Difference in the roots. We can go to normal camera if you like. And go into the light. And now, when we're looking at grasses, Ferg, we look at grasses here. Let me go down on the ground. You want to be able to grab the entire grass out. So that is an entire grass there. You can see clearly that there was some form of vegetative reproduction coming off the side. This probably would have formed more roots somewhere else, but that is the entire grass piece there. And if you want to study and identify the grass itself, you need to be able to grab the entire thing out. You see, I can break this up, and it's a couple other pieces that have grown out of there, but it is all still the same grass species. And sometimes you might find a couple growing very, very closely together, like I did here. And those are the same species. Those are the same species, but they had basically grown very, very closely together. And each of them will give you a different idea. Kat, that's a very good question. Do grazers eat a lot of insects when they're eating? I'm sure they probably do munch all sorts of things in while they are moving around. Who knows how many small birds might fall in there as well. I don't think they're deliberately looking for it, but it does happen. But we do find a lot of insects jump as they move through the grass, and but they might feed on lots of larvae, caterpillar type things, all sorts of the small nymphs and eggs, unknowing to themselves. But let's just come have a quick little look over here, Fergie. And we'll have a look at the difference between these little grasses here. You can, if you look closely here, there is the grass itself growing. There is the grass itself growing. So when you want to identify it, you need to really get in there and have a look which is actually the grass that we're looking for. Here there are two species next to each other. But then if I have a look at this marvelous one over here, look at that. That entire thing there is probably one. Oh, there's a few actually. But that is a nice dynamic when it comes to grasses. And it is all about ground cover. It's all about protecting the soil. It's all about accessing as many nutrients as possible and also providing food for the grazing animals. And I believe Brent is back in his vehicle. Let's go back over to him.